Welcome, brave souls, to Darken Haven. Here, in the shadows, we unravel tales of terror and descent into the unknown. Are you ready to confront the darkness? Step inside if you dare. It was on the coldest night of the year that I found myself driving through the deserted back roads of Vermont. The snow-laden trees leaned over the narrow path, their skeletal branches clawing at the moonless sky. My GPS had died miles ago, and my phone was as dead as the frozen landscape around me. The only light came from my car's dim headlights, which barely pierced through the swirling snowflakes. I had been driving for hours, searching for a shortcut to avoid the storm. The road signs were all but invisible, covered in a thick blanket of white. I was starting to lose hope when I saw a faint glow in the distance, a house, its windows lit up like beacons in the dark. I pulled up to the house, its Victorian silhouette looming against the night. It seemed out of place, too grand for the middle of nowhere. But I was desperate, and the cold was biting. I needed shelter. I walked up to the front door and knocked, the sound echoing eerily. The door creaked open, and an old man with piercing blue eyes peered out. His face was gaunt, lined with deep wrinkles, and his white hair hung in unkempt strands. He stared at me for a moment before speaking. "You must be lost," he said, his voice a raspy whisper. "Yes," I replied, shivering. "My car broke down, and I need a place to stay for the night." He nodded slowly and stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The interior was surprisingly warm and well kept, filled with antique furniture and a crackling fireplace. The old man led me to a cozy sitting room and offered me a seat by the fire. "Thank you," I said, thawing out by the flames. "My name is Elias," the old man said, settling into a chair opposite me. "This house has been in my family for generations. We don't get many visitors out here." "I'm sorry to intrude," I replied. "I'm James." Elias nodded again, his eyes never leaving mine. "It's no trouble. You're welcome to stay the night. I have a guest room upstairs." Grateful, I accepted his offer and followed him up the winding staircase. The house was a maze of narrow hallways and dimly lit rooms, all filled with ancient portraits and dusty relics. He led me to a small but comfortable bedroom, its four-poster bed draped in heavy velvet curtains. "Sleep well," Elias said, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "And don't wander. This house is old and full of secrets." With that cryptic warning, he left me alone. I changed into the spare clothes I always kept in my bag and climbed into bed, exhaustion quickly overtaking me. But sleep did not come easily. The wind howled outside and the house creaked and groaned, as if alive. I felt an unshakable sense of unease, as if I were being watched. Hours passed and I finally drifted off into a fitful sleep. I dreamt of shadowy figures moving through the house, whispering my name. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding. The room was deathly silent, save for the distant ticking of a grandfather clock. Curiosity gnawed at me, and I decided to ignore Elias's warning and investigate. Perhaps it was just curiosity, or maybe the dreams had unnerved me. I slipped out of bed and crept into the hallway. The house seemed even more sinister in the dark, the portraits on the walls appearing almost lifelike, their eyes following me. I wandered through the corridors, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. As I turned a corner, I saw a faint light coming from a room at the end of the hall. I approached cautiously, my breath visible in the freezing air. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open, revealing a library filled with ancient books and artifacts. illuminating an open book. I stepped inside, drawn to the eerie glow. The book was filled with strange symbols and illustrations, depicting monstrous creatures and gruesome scenes. As I reached out to touch it, a cold hand grasped my shoulder. I spun around to see Elias, his face twisted in anger. "I told you not to wander," he hissed, his grip tightening. "I'm sorry," I stammered, pulling away. I couldn't sleep. He stared at me for a long moment before releasing me. "This house is dangerous," he said. "There are things here you do not understand." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the house. We both turned towards the sound, my heart racing. Elias grabbed a lantern and motioned for me to follow. We descended into the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The stairs creaked under our weight, and the darkness seemed to press in from all sides. At the bottom, we found a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. Elias pushed it open, revealing a cavernous room filled with bizarre artifacts and strange machinery. In the center of the room was a large circular stone with intricate carvings. Elias approached it cautiously, the lantern casting flickering shadows on the walls. "This is the heart of the house," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It holds great power, but it must never be disturbed." As he spoke, the carvings on the stone began to glow with an eerie blue light. The air grew thick with a palpable energy, and I felt a sudden sense of dread. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The house is awakening," Elias replied, his eyes wide with fear. "You've disrupted its slumber." Before I could react, the ground shook violently, and the stone cracked open, releasing a blinding light. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes. When the light faded, I saw something that froze my blood. A figure emerged from the stone, tall and shadowy, its form shifting and twisting. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and it reached out towards us with clawed hands. Elias shouted something in a language I didn't understand, and the figure recoiled, but it was not enough. The house trembled, and the walls seemed to close in around us. "Run," Elias screamed, pushing me towards the stairs. "Get out of here." I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted up the stairs, the house shaking violently. I could hear the creature's enraged roar behind me, echoing through the corridors. I raced through the hallways, not daring to look back, until I burst through the front door and into the freezing night. I ran to my car, my breath coming in ragged gasps. By some miracle, the engine roared to life, and I sped away from the house, the tires skidding on the icy road. As I drove, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house stood ominously against the night sky, its windows dark and lifeless. But I knew the truth. Something ancient and evil had been awakened, and it would not rest until it had claimed its due. I never spoke of that night again, but the memories haunted me. The house, the stone, the creature, they were burned into my mind. And sometimes in the dead of night I could still hear its whisper, calling my name, beckoning me back to that cursed place. If you survived our tale of terror and crave more stories from the shadows, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon, and let the nightmares continue to haunt you. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.